This was about 3 years ago. I was staying in a rental house while vacationing to see my brother. He lives 6 hours away from me, so I don't get to see him very often, and he only has a 1-bedroom apartment, which makes me have to stay elsewhere when I do see him. The house I rented out was really close to my brother's apartment and was the same price as nearby hotels, so it was an easy choice to go for the house. I had gotten into town early in the morning and met up with my brother for lunch, then got some groceries and was back at the rental around 5 o'clock. The place didn't have a lot to offer other than a couch, TV, and bed, but for the price, I wasn't expecting too much. I stayed up until 9, then got in bed. It had been a long day, so I was looking forward to getting a good amount of shut-eye. I laid in bed awake for longer than I wanted, falling asleep after an hour.
This holiday, Verizon is helping you bundle up incredible gifts and savings. You'll get the latest.
When my eyes opened, the room was in full darkness, and I could sense that it was the middle of the night. Before I could even check the time, though, I heard something outside the room. Footsteps slowly walking down the hallway, and then a door closing softly, followed by silence. It was like my whole body had frozen, laying in the bed still and staring through the dark room. After a minute passed of no more sounds, I got up and looked into the hallway. At the far end, I could see the front door, which I knew was the door I'd heard them close, but I didn't know if they were still in the house or if they had left. I quietly walked through the other rooms, not seeing anyone. Actually, the only sign of them having been here was the front door being unlocked. I didn't see any footprints or notice anything missing. After checking the locks on all the doors, I called 911. They came fairly quick, but didn't do much of anything. They said to make sure all the doors were locked and to contact the owner, but aside from their useless advice, they provided no intent to figure it out. I stayed up that night and waited until morning, unable to sleep. After calling the owner of the rental and discussing what had happened, I went to see my brother. While out, the owner let me know that he'd changed the PIN code on the door, which did make me feel a lot better. I was out until late that day though, getting some dinner and drinks with my brother, and being dropped off at the rental sometime between 8 and 9. I went to the couch and sat down, feeling sleepy, but also feeling that nervousness again about the situation. Every time my eyes were about to close, my head would be filled with fear of the intruder coming back. Knowing I needed to sleep tonight, since I didn't get any last night, I decided to go through the house again and check the rooms in hopes to ease my mind. I walked around the living room and kitchen, then went down the hallway to the bedroom. I opened the closet and checked the attached bathroom, and just before I walked out, I heard footsteps running through the hallway toward the bedroom I was in. I swung around the corner and only caught a glimpse of a large man as he slammed the bedroom door shut. Then I heard his footsteps departing and going toward the living room, while I stood in place and just listened. He went all around the living room and kitchen, staying inside the house for probably 2 minutes before I heard the front door open and close behind him. Police came quickly after I called again, and this time the homeowner came by as well. The living room and kitchen looked like they'd been ransacked. The furniture was scattered all over, and the cabinets were all open, with the things inside them having been tossed over the floor. After a closer look though, the owner didn't see anything that was missing. It looked more like whoever that man was looking for something very specific and nothing more. I left the rental and got a hotel after that, and within a few days, I was never updated again about anything. I assume he was never found, but the situation has left me with a lot of questions. Something that really gets to me is that I had checked the entire house that one night, so where was he hiding? How long had he been in the house with me? Was he watching me? And what would have happened if I had fallen asleep on the couch? I'm 32 and live alone in a rural house. I have a few neighbors half a mile down that I talk to sometimes, but I mostly keep to myself and only go into town when I need to. I'm half retired, so I spend most of my time at home, but a few months out of the year, I do some contracting work. At the time, it was late fall, and on this day, I was getting all of my equipment from out in the yard and storing it in the shed to prepare for the winter season. It was just a bunch of tools and lawnmowers and stuff like that I'd left out. Anyway, while I was outside, I saw something unusual. A man was walking along the road that connected to my driveway. He had nothing on him, no backpack or camping gear. For context, this road he was on was entirely empty, aside from the few houses like mine, and the town was a 4-hour walk away. I watched him until he disappeared far off down the road. After he was gone, I looked down in both directions and saw no cars on the side of the road on either direction. It was really odd, but after a while I stopped thinking about it and finished up with my yard. I was back inside before dark and made dinner while I cooled off. As I sat there, a sudden thud from outside startled me up from the table. It was a wooden thump, like it had come from where the shed was. I looked through the window out into the yard, and the door to the shed was wide open. It was old, but the door had never unlatched on its own like that before. Still unsure of exactly what was going on, I knew I had to check on it and close the door at the very least. I got my rifle just in case, but I was confident it wasn't going to be anything dangerous. Walking out to the shed, I listened carefully and heard nothing other than the quietness of the night. I looked around the field as well and saw no signs of wildlife or people. When I got to the open shed door, I turned on my flashlight and shined it inside. Nothing looked out of place. I stepped in and did a more thorough search for any animals hiding, but still there wasn't anything. I closed the door to the shed and made sure it was secure, then started walking back. As I made my way through the field toward my house, an eerie feeling grew inside me. I didn't know what it was, but it continued to grow as I reached the front door. I stepped in and locked the door behind me. As I walked into the hallway, I saw a shoe print right on the floor. I flicked on the light, and going across the hallway was a line of dirty shoe prints leading up to the spare bedroom. My heart started beating faster as I held my rifle up and took a deep breath, then carefully walked up to the door. I leaned my head against the wood and listened, hearing what sounded like someone breathing right on the other side. Before I could even think on what to do next, the handle twisted from my grip and the door swung open. I jumped back and held the rifle up as a man looked like he was about to charge at me, holding a huge metal shovel up. I think my gun stopped him in his tracks though. He stood in the doorway, holding the shovel like a weapon and having a face full of rage. I yelled as loud as I could for him to stay back, trying to sound intimidating, but I was undoubtedly terrified. The man kept his distance, but his face full of anger never faded. From this moment though, I didn't know what to do. Cops wouldn't be able to make it here for probably an hour if I called, and I definitely didn't want to hold him at gunpoint for that long, risking anything to happen.
Hit pause on whatever you're listening to and hit play on your next adventure. This fall, get double points on every qualified stay. Life's a trip. Make the most of it at Best Western. Visit bestwestern.com for complete terms and conditions.
As we stood in a strange silence, the man suddenly threw the shovel in my direction, then sprinted back into the room. I ran in to see what he was doing and watched him start crawling out of the window. Part of me wanted to stop him, but another part of me couldn't get myself to. He jumped out and ran off into the field, escaping in the vast empty night, with no way of knowing where he was running off to. To this day, that man has never been identified, and his intentions are unknown. All I can say is that if I hadn't had my rifle in my hands, or if he had gotten the jump on me, I likely wouldn't be here today. I was 18 at the time, and it was the beginning of summer, so I was off from school and I didn't have any job. The majority of my time was spent inside the house playing video games, watching YouTube or TV, or just relaxing. When this happened, my parents were out of town for a few days, leaving me with the house. This was a common thing and was never a big deal. Sometimes I'd invite friends over or whatever, but this night I was just enjoying the time to myself. I was watching a rerun of one of my favorite shows on Netflix, while also scrolling through my phone. It was late, I don't know the exact time, but I think maybe 11 or 12, when there was a knock at the front door. I paused the TV and went to see who it was. It almost didn't even register in my mind that it was so late, but thankfully it did before I carelessly would have opened the door. I looked in the peephole and saw two men, both wearing similar clothes, and just waiting for me to answer. I stood there and thought for a second whether or not to let them know I was home by asking what they wanted. I ended up staying quiet and just watching to wait for them to leave, but a few seconds later, they called out. "Hello? We're here looking to speak with Mr. and Mrs. Ian." That was my parents they were referring to, though I changed the name for privacy. Confused, I still remained quiet, knowing it was far too late for any sort of visit, even if it was important. After a minute, the men looked at each other and said something quietly, then walked off the porch. The outdoor lights were off, so I couldn't see where they went, but I never saw any headlights or cars show up, which had me wondering if they'd walked here, which would only make things weirder. I went back to the TV, but left it on pause for a while so I could hear if they came back. It only took a few minutes until I heard a pair of footsteps outside the house. They went up to the porch, but instead of knocking like they did before, they started making their way around to the side of the house. I got up and ran to the back window as they got to the backyard. I saw them open the fence and enter, and I hid away from the window so I wouldn't be seen, but I could hear them go up to the back door. They started talking, then began messing with the door. I took this as my chance to get my phone and hide inside the garage. I called the police, explaining the possible break-in that was taking place, and after less than a minute, a loud pop sound vibrated through the house, and the back door slid open. Their footsteps went through the house and straight to the stairs, going up to the bedrooms. A door opened, they entered, then closed it behind them. But after that, there were no more sounds. I waited for a horrifying and slow 10 minutes in silence before the police pulled up to the house. When they did, there was a few quick footsteps upstairs, then the two men started arguing. A few officers came in through the back door and ran upstairs, while another came to the garage and helped me outside. The men didn't resist arrest, but they also didn't speak a word on why they were there. Despite weeks going by, and it being somewhat obvious that they weren't simply robbing the house, the only thing they could charge them with was breaking and entering. It scares me, though, that they seem to be looking for my parents, and it almost felt like they were going to wait upstairs for them until they came back from their trip. I think back to whether or not I should have shown myself, and if that would have stopped the break-in, but something about their behavior tells me that they still would have broken in and would have done to me whatever was necessary.
moved into the duplex that spring because it was quiet, cheap, and the listing said the top floor was vacant pending renovation. I work from home, so silence mattered more than square footage. My setup was simple: laptop on the dining table, kettle always refilling, noise-canceling headphones most of the day. The landlord told me, "No one's up there yet. You'll barely notice it." Seemed like a deal. The first odd sound came at 12:18 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'd stayed up late finishing reports, headphones off, window cracked for air. Above my bedroom, something scraped, long and steady like chair legs sliding across wood. It stopped the second I held my breath. I told myself it was the house expanding, maybe the pipes. Easy. The next night, same time, only heavier. A dragging sound, then one single weighted step. I stood in the hallway with my mug, waiting for another. Nothing. Silence settled again. You can dismiss strange sounds once, maybe twice, but the third night you start writing things down. So I did. The pattern stayed between 12:10 and 1 a.m., like someone upstairs kept the same midnight schedule. Curiosity got me. I held my phone flat to the ceiling, recording a few minutes at a time. Later, I listened back through headphones. Friday morning, I noticed fine dust scattered on my dining table under a thin crack in the ceiling. New, pale grit like sand. I wiped it away, pretending I didn't know where it came from. That night, I stepped outside and looked up at the vacant windows, all dark. Just as I turned to go back in, one blind lifted slightly, then stilled. If it was wind, it had remarkable timing. I called the landlord the next day. "No one's got a key but me," he said. "Place is empty, probably old pipes." I wanted to believe him, but he added, "I'll check next week," and that didn't help much. That night, around 12:16, the power flickered. Router lights died, apartment sank into quiet. From directly above my bedroom came a thud, like something heavy dropping and settling. I took the broom from the hallway and tapped the ceiling 3 times. 3 answering thumps followed, each one slower, farther apart, like someone backing away across the floor. I didn't call the landlord. I called non-emergency dispatch. 2 officers showed up. They were polite but unconvinced. They circled the building, tried the upstairs door. Locked tight, deadbolt engaged, no sign of tampering. "We can't break in without cause," one said. "Call us if it happens again." Then they left. That night, I dragged a blanket to the couch in the living room and kept the lamp on. Not because light fixes anything, it just makes the dark choose its corners. By morning, the same dust had fallen again, now forming a faint halo under the ceiling crack. Over the next week, the noises became inconsistent. A few nights silent, a few punctuated by a quick scrape, a short drag. It was enough to keep me checking the clock before bed, waiting to see if the pattern returned. A few nights later, my neighbor mentioned hearing someone moving furniture late in one of the houses behind us. I didn't tell him my ceiling was the one doing the moving. Some things are easier to face if you keep them private. The landlord finally came the following week. He knocked on the upstairs door, paused, then unlocked it with a new key. "See? Empty," he said, letting me look. And it was. Bare wood floors, no furniture, just paint cans and a few tools. He looked around, confused but unbothered. "Buildings settle at night," he said. "You're hearing the shift." He offered a rent discount for the trouble, which told me he believed more than he wanted to admit. That same night, at exactly 12 a.m., the dragging came again, clearer than ever. One long scrape, one single step. I didn't bother checking the ceiling. I just lay there and listened, counting the seconds between sounds like timing heartbeats. Whoever or whatever was up there was keeping time with me. 2 nights later, everything changed. It was around 3 a.m. I was working late. Deadlines. When I noticed headlights sweep across my living room wall. I looked out the blinds and saw a black SUV idle to a stop in front of the duplex. 3 men got out, all wearing wearing ski masks. They didn't knock. They didn't check addresses. They moved fast and quiet, heading straight for the upstairs entrance. One carried what looked like a duffel bag. Another had something heavy in his hand, maybe a pipe or crowbar. Then came shouting. A crash, furniture slamming against the floorboards above my head. I backed into the hallway, phone in hand, trying to dial but afraid to make a sound. I could hear them yelling, short, clipped words I couldn't make out. Then a muffled cry. Then another thud that shook dust from the ceiling. 10 seconds later, the noise stopped. I peeked through the blinds again. The three men rushed out carrying the same duffel, only now it sagged heavier, like it wasn't just clothes inside. They piled into the SUV and peeled off without headlights. That's when I finally called 911. Someone's in the apartment above me, I whispered. 3 men just broke in. They left in a black SUV. No plates I could see. There's been fighting. I think someone's hurt. The dispatcher told me to stay inside and wait for officers. I sat by the window, every muscle locked, counting headlights until I saw flashing blue. 2 cruisers arrived within minutes. I met one officer at the door, pointed them upstairs. The other stayed with me while I tried to explain what I'd heard. The weeks of noises, the so-called vacant unit, the landlord's visit. Then came a shout from upstairs. We've got one. They found a man lying on the living room floor up there, breathing, semi-conscious. The officers called for EMTs. Later, I watched from the lawn as paramedics carried him out on a stretcher, his hands cuffed loosely to the rails. An officer came over and told me, looks like the place wasn't empty after all. Guy's been squatting up there for months. We found scales, baggies, vacuum sealers. Looks like he was packaging drugs. Probably owed someone money. I just stared at the dark windows above mine. All those nights of dragging sounds, not ghosts, not pipes, but a man pacing around his own mess, waiting for something to come due. The officer said the 3 masked men likely came to collect a debt, took what they wanted, and left him alive. He'd be arrested once treated. By dawn, my living room still smelled like sawdust and fear. The landlord called later that day, voice shaky, promising to change all the locks, get me a month's rent back, maybe a new lease somewhere else. He kept apologizing like it was a customer service mistake. I moved out that week because I know what I heard wasn't just noise. It was someone living right above me, waiting for his night to come. And when it did, it wasn't the kind of ending that fixes anything. It just made me realize how thin the ceiling really is between normal life and the kind of trouble that doesn't knock. And if I hear footsteps in an empty apartment again, I won't wait for proof. I've always liked routine. I grade my students' essays at the dining table, lamp to the left, motion light outside the garage. Predictable nights make up for unpredictable kids. Next door sat an old Victorian that'd been vacant for months. No trash out, no cars, just a for sale sign and weather-faded flyers stuck in the door. I got used to it. Then one night while I was grading, I noticed a faint glow behind its upstairs curtains. Not bright, more like a lamp half covered by a sheet. It vanished before I could even stand. I figured it was a timer, maybe a realtor's trick to make the place look lived in. But 2 nights later, it happened again. I walked over on a Saturday morning pretending to pick up the flyers clogging the porch slot. Up close, the brass handle showed old fingerprints. The flyers were soggy and stuck together. I peeked around back, expecting boarded windows, but instead I caught a brief sweep of light inside. A flashlight beam, steady, then turning toward my own house before it clicked off. I stood there, heart too aware of itself, and left before I could make sense of it. A week later, I noticed my mail had thinned out. Nothing important missing, just the usual junk. Utility flyers, alumni mailers. Then on Sunday, I saw that same alumni magazine sitting on the empty house's porch, addressed to me. That's when I stopped telling myself stories. That night, I I took a flashlight and crossed over again, moving along the side fence. Through a dusty side window, I saw exactly what I shouldn't have. A folded sleeping bag, food wrappers, water bottles, and a neat stack of 8x10 photos on a radiator cover. My photos. My house. My windows. My kitchen with me blurred behind the sink. My bedroom curtain half drawn. The angles didn't lie. Someone had been watching. I backed off slow, went behind my car, and called the police. Within minutes, 2 officers arrived. One stayed with me, the other circled the property with a flashlight. When he came back, he said, "Looks like there's someone inside." We waited for backup. When they reached the back door, the latch hung open, footprints pressed deep into the dirt. Whoever was inside was already gone. The realtor showed up with keys.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies.
Pale and sweating. Inside, the cops bagged everything. Wrappers, bottles, the photos. Clean squares in the dust showed where more had been taken. "We'll call you for a statement," one officer said. I didn't ask for details. That night, I graded papers with every light on. The house next door stayed dark, as if nothing had ever lived there. The realtor changed the locks the next day and added motion lights, front and back. I installed one over my side door. The neighborhood returned to normal. Sprinklers at night, quiet driveways, the late bus sighing at the corner. 3 nights later, I saw the upstairs glow again, just for a few seconds. I told myself it was a leftover timer. Still, I wrote a note to remind myself to tell the realtor. My list grew longer. Moved the lamp away from the window, replaced my curtains, stopped grading so late. I didn't tell anyone. Fear sounds foolish when you try to explain it out loud. 2 weeks passed without trouble. Then one Tuesday night, while taking the trash out, I lifted my bin lid and felt it tug, something taped underneath. A single photograph. My kitchen window, taken at night. The angle was higher this time, just above eye level. In the reflection, I could see myself at the sink, dish towel over my shoulder, completely unaware. The photo paper was crisp, still smelling faintly of developer chemicals. I didn't drop it. I peeled it off carefully, took it inside, and slid it into a folder with the date in pencil. That night, I slept in the guest room, the one without windows facing the Victorian. I wedged a chair under the doorknob. It made me feel better, even if it wouldn't stop anything real. Months passed. The house eventually sold to a couple with a baby. We wave sometimes. I never told them what happened, and I never got the photos back from the police. The only person I spoke to about this was the school principal, and we both think that it was a student I failed that year. The student made a scene at school and got expelled, and maybe he was trying to scare me. For a moment it worked, but then I understood what it was. Now, when I take the trash out, I still lift the lid just to be sure. Nothing's been there since, but absences make their own kind of noise. The kind that follows you back inside, reminding you that someone once stood close enough to photograph your life and make it look like theirs. I keep that last picture in a folder on my desk. Not as evidence, just a reminder that even when the house next door looks empty, it doesn't mean you're alone. I'm the guy on the block who goes all in on Halloween. Fog machine, skeleton in a lawn chair, motion lights, the works. My route as a postal worker makes me half local celebrity to the kids. I know most of their names, most parents too. That Monday in 2022, I set out my usual candy bowl on the porch with a handwritten sign, "Take 2. I'm watching. Be cool." I actually do sit near the door. It's part of the fun. By 9, the crowd thinned to stragglers. I left the porch light on, bowl inside, figured a few latecomers might still try. At 10:11 p.m., the doorbell rang. One kid stood there alone, cheap ghost mask, small frame, no parents in sight. I handed over 2 pieces and gave my friendly spiel. He didn't say a word, just nodded and left. At 10:27, same kid, same mask. Took one, left. At 10:41, again. By then, it was more weird than funny, so I brought the bowl inside. 10 minutes later, another ring. I cracked the door, chain still on. "We're out, bud," I said. The kid leaned in, too close for comfort, silent. So close I caught a faint smell of sugar through the mask. Something about the way he moved, it wasn't shy. It was like he was seeing how far he could push. "Go on home, all right?" I added, but he didn't move. That's when I noticed the shape under his sleeve. A long, straight bulge, tucked tight against his wrist. I stepped onto the porch, widening the gap so he'd back off. He did, quick, like the movement surprised him. The mask bent inward along one cheek, the kind that comes stapled to cardboard. I could see pink skin through the eye holes, flushed and sweating. "You live around here?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. He angled his body away from the street, like he didn't want to be seen. "Hey," I said, "you're my neighbor's kid, right?" He flinched when I said his name. I reached up, lifted the edge of the mask just enough to see. His mouth was clamped tight, eyes glassy, unfocused. The sleeve slipped slightly, just enough for the knife handle to flash, black plastic in the porch light. I lowered the mask and said, "You should head home."
Out here, mornings start with a few more layers. It's the season for more time at the grill, more feed, heaters burning, and the woods calling. Hard-working hands and love for our land. Tractor Supply, for life out here.
Ted, Charlie, Alex,
Ron, Mark.
Michael! All these things work good together.
He whispered, "Wanted to see the house inside." "Not your house. The house." Then he turned and bolted down the walkway into the dark between hedges. I locked everything, bolt, chain, porch light off. Called his dad. No answer. Called non-emergency. They said they'd send a patrol. The cruiser rolled past 20 minutes later, flashlights cutting over lawns. One officer knocked next door. No response. "We'll check back," he told me, scribbling a report on his hood. "Call if he returns." I tried to sleep, but every creak sounded like steps. The fog machine tube outside hissed once as it cooled. It almost made me laugh. Almost. The next morning, I caught the dad in his driveway. "Hey," I said carefully, "your son came by late last night." He laughed before I could finish. "Teenage weirdness. You know how they get. No harm." He didn't ask what his kid had said. Didn't ask about the knife. One afternoon, I spotted the kid. He was out front with his dad. No hoodie, no mask. He looked right at me, then quickly away, like he'd already decided the conversation was over. A few days later, the police knocked on their door, and after that, his father never spoke to me again, as if I were the one to blame. I still put out decorations the next year. I still smile for the kids, still play the part, but once it's past 10, I turn the light off. Because I keep thinking about the way he said it, wanted to see the house inside. Not a threat, not curiosity, more like something he believed he was owed. I don't get many weeks off. When I do, I fix what's broken, oil the hinges, clear the gutters, patch what needs patching. I'm a trucker, and it was a quiet week in Dallas, summer heat settling low. That's when the first knock came. A guy stood on my porch in a reflective vest. Not the city kind, cheap, wrinkled, like he bought it online. Clipboard in hand, badge swinging from a lanyard. "Evening," he said, smiling. "Neighborhood watch, doing safety checks. You got any cameras? What direction they face?" I nodded, listening. He kept talking. "What time are you usually out? Nights? Mornings? Which side door's easiest if we ever needed to do a welfare check?" That one stuck. "Side door?" I asked. "You're not police." He chuckled, waving it off. "Just being thorough, sir." I told him I'd check with the HOA. He said he'd already cleared it with the watch captain. Named the wrong person. Twice. When he left, I texted the real captain, got a guy in a vest asking about camera angles. That you? No answer. 15 minutes later, my neighbor Mrs. Chen texted a photo to the group chat. Same guy, same vest, same clipboard. He asked which windows we leave open. I finally got the captain on the phone. I'm in Austin, he said. We don't knock doors after dark. Whoever that is, he's not with us. By then, the man was on the next street. I watched him from my window, never writing anything down, just scanning porches, peeking at side gates. A neighbor down the block called him out. Evening, sir. Which sector you from? The guy smiled, flashed the badge. West Division. That's not you, the neighbor said. The man's grin dropped. We had a report of suspicious activity. I'm that report, the neighbor replied. The man turned and started walking, then sprinting. The neighbor followed. I jogged after him, keeping distance. At the corner, the man jumped into a dark gray sedan idling with its lights off. When it peeled away, the license plate was covered by a muddy plastic frame. In the road, something small glinted in the headlights. A flashlight and the badge lanyard. Police showed up 15 minutes later. The badge turned out to be real, stolen from a Dallas officer during a gym locker break-in weeks before. The flashlight, too, was standard issue gear. The cops promised extra patrols, told us to lock up, and drove off. That night, I sat by the window with the TV muted. I'd been on the road long enough to recognize the look in that man's eyes. It wasn't random curiosity. He was mapping. The next morning, I found another flashlight in my flower bed. Must have rolled there when he ran. It was small, heavy, good quality. When I clicked it on, the beam was weak, yellowed, tired. I swept it across the living room wall, across the photos of my kid and my dad at a baseball game, and it hit me how much I hated seeing my home under someone else's light. For 3 nights, patrol cars crept through our block. You could tell they meant it. Windows down, lights dimmed, watching driveways. Nothing happened. Then the texts went quiet again. Routine crept back, but I didn't shake it. Every time I went out at dusk, I checked my mirrors. I started locking the gate even when I was home. A few days later, Mrs. Chen messaged, "That guy came back in daylight, asked about the alley gate, left when I said I'd call my husband." Patrol rolled by again. Too late, as always. The captain stopped over that evening. We walked the alley together, pointing at weak fence lines, gates with broken latches. It felt like we were rehearsing someone else's plan. Just actors walking a stage someone had already scouted. That night, I sat in my truck cab out front, engine off, window cracked. I pictured the imposter knocking on other doors, using that same polite voice, gathering new routines to file away. It hit me that if he'd wanted to break in, he didn't need to force anything. People were handing him blueprints with every friendly conversation. I kept the flashlight on the counter for a few days, thinking I'd hand it over if an officer came by. But on the 3rd day, I took the batteries out and shoved it in a drawer. A week later, my captain sent an update. No leads, no suspect vehicle match. Probably casing houses, maybe worse. That's what unsettled me. The maybe. Since then, I don't open the door right away anymore. I talk through it first. I ask for names I already know, reasons that make sense. And if someone flashes a badge on my porch again, I'll check the face before the words. I liked that duplex. Cheap rent, good location, quiet street in Tempe. Only real catch was the driveway. One thin strip of concrete, meant to be shared. My neighbor across the line was an older guy, always on his porch like it was a job. Straw hat, old newspaper, and that stare you feel before you see it. First week, I eased my car in, hugging the edge. He waved me to stop like an airport marshal. "Keep your wheels inside the line," he said, tapping the faded crack that split the drive. "Fire code." "Got it," I said, smiling like I meant it. It started small. Trash cans moved an inch, then 2, perfectly lined up when I hadn't touched them. Notes tucked under my wiper, too close to the line. Or, please align bins properly. The handwriting was so neat it felt rehearsed. At first I laughed. Texted a photo to my friends. My neighbor runs the HOA of one. But the humor went flat fast. One morning, 2 of my tires were slashed. A scrap of paper under the wiper read, "Don't block my exit again." The thing is, I hadn't parked there in 2 days. When I knocked on his door, he lifted a single blind slat and said, "Some people don't respect boundaries." Then he let it fall. That night, I bought a dash cam off Amazon, mounted it on the windshield, aimed down the driveway. The red blinking light made me feel safer, or at least watched by the right side. I started noticing more. The way his porch chair angled slightly toward my door. How he appeared the second I opened my trunk or stepped onto the porch. Always just watching. He'd make small talk with this tight smile. Long day? Trash pickups early tomorrow. Always normal words, wrong tone. I kept my answers short. Then came Friday night. I'd closed at work, tired, driving home a little before midnight. The street was empty, orange from the street lamps. I turned onto my block and froze. He was standing dead center in the driveway. Hands at his sides, no wave, no word, just waiting. My headlights caught his eyes for a second, and something in the look told me he wasn't bluffing. I slowed, just enough to make a choice. Then I passed him. As I rolled by, he stepped closer, then lunged, grabbing the passenger side. The sound of his hand slamming the window startled me. "You do not pass here," he yelled. My name followed, which meant he'd been paying a lot more attention than I thought. I didn't stop. I hit the gas just enough to make him stumble back. A porch light across the street flicked on. Someone shouted for me to stop. I didn't. I parked 2 blocks away under a streetlight, called a friend first, then 911. When the officers showed up, he was gone. I told them everything, the notes, the tires, the dash cam. "It's technically civil," one officer said, "unless he threatens you again." He grabbed my car, I said. "Then it's harassment, borderline. We'll log it. Maybe point a camera toward the shared space." They knocked on his door anyway. No answer. The porch chair sat empty, but the blinds were open now, wide. Before leaving, one officer told me, "Document everything. Don't engage." That night, I texted my landlord. He replied in the morning, "We'll paint a divider line and put up a bollard. Soon." Landlord, soon means never. So I adjusted my life. Parked a block away, walked home with my phone camera open, flashlight on, pretended it didn't bother me that every time I turned the corner, his silhouette was already there, waiting. The dash cam became my diary. It caught nothing interesting. Just moths, cats, wind. But I kept it rolling because I didn't trust the quiet. He, on the other hand, got louder in small ways. His radio played exactly at dusk, always the same station. He watered his single porch plant for an hour, staring at the stream as it hit dry dirt. He rearranged his wind chimes by fractions of inches. All those gestures meant something, even if I couldn't name what. The police checked in once after my follow-up report. "We can give him a verbal warning," the officer said. They did. I watched through my blinds as the officer talked to him, the old man nodding with that same calm smile. When the car left, he bent to adjust his welcome mat until its corners lined perfectly with the porch boards. Days passed. Nothing happened. Then one Thursday, I parked in the drive just long enough to unload groceries. When I came back out, a new note sat under my wiper, held down by a small river rock. "We keep our agreements here." He sat on the porch again, hands folded like prayer, smiling without moving. I called the police again. They came again. He denied everything again. They told me, "If you can prove it's him, we can escalate." I showed the notes, the dash cam, the video of him lunging. They promised to document it all. But promises don't stop fear. Paper doesn't stop people. A week later, The landlord finally sent someone to paint the line. The guy rolled a perfect white stripe down the middle of the drive, said the bollard would come soon. That line didn't help. It just made the space look smaller. After that, I parked 2 blocks away every night, walking the same route under the same dim lamps. I told myself it was safer, but it also felt like surrender. Every time I turned the corner, I slowed, scanning the driveway mouth. Sometimes he was there, sometimes not, and that almost felt worse. It's been months now. The bollard finally showed up. Bright yellow, waist high, cheerful. He hates it, I can tell. He keeps stacking his porch magazines into neat little towers like a wall against the color. I still use the dash cam. The police numbers pinned in my phone favorites. I tell myself I'm cautious, not scared. But every night, when I turn onto my street, I do the same thing. Ease the car forward, scan the drive, look for a shape that doesn't belong. Most nights there's nothing, just the dark line of concrete and a few fallen leaves. But I never assume, because the one time you do, that's when someone steps out of the shadow and says, "You're too close to the line." If these neighbor stories made you rethink waving at anyone across the fence, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next nightmare, and tell me the moment that creeped you out the most. And if you think the suburbs are calm and predictable, oh man, you're about to find out they're the opposite. Click now to watch 4 disturbing suburban horror stories.
Paul?
It was one of those dead quiet Plano nights. Not even a breeze. You could hear sprinklers clicking 3 houses down. I just finished a brutal ER shift, half watching TV, half scrolling my phone, trying to let my head empty out. Then came the knock. 3 quick taps. 3:04 a.m. My first thought was that it was just a mistake. Maybe some neighbor who got locked out at most. But when I looked through the peephole, I saw a girl. Barefoot, maybe 16. Her hair was tangled, her arms crossed tight. She looked like someone who'd run through something. "My phone died," she said. "Can I call my mom?" I didn't know what to do. The nurse in me saw glassy eyes, shallow breaths, bare feet on concrete. The human in me saw a scared kid. I cracked the door. "You can call from inside." She stepped in, small and quiet, like she was afraid to touch anything. I gave her my phone. Her fingers shook as she typed the number. It rang. No answer. She tried again. Same. Then she just stopped. Her eyes drifted to the front window. The blinds were barely cracked. Outside, I heard gravel crunch, footsteps, someone walking on the side path, and then a man's voice, calm as if he'd been out for a walk. He said her name, not shouted, said. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the rug. Without a sound, she sprinted through the kitchen, pushed the back door open, and vanished into the dark. The man didn't chase her. He walked straight toward my house. I locked the door, grabbed the phone, and called 911. My voice went automatic, the same tone I use in trauma bays. "There's a man outside my home," I told the dispatcher. "A young girl came to my door. She ran. He's here now." Through the blinds, I saw him climb the steps. Average build, jeans, jacket. He stopped under the porch light and just stood there looking up at it like he was studying the wattage. The dispatcher asked questions. Was he armed? Did I know him? I couldn't answer any of it. I just whispered, "He's right there." He stayed that way for what felt like minutes. Perfectly still, face tilted toward the light. Then, softly, he said the girl's name again. "You know better." That was when I knew this wasn't random. When the sirens finally broke the silence, he didn't run. He stepped off the porch and melted into the shadows between houses. By the time police arrived, He was gone. They swept the yard, asked for a description. One of them said it could have been a test, someone checking which houses would open. Another said domestic. Neither theory made me feel better. They promised extra patrols, handed me a card, and drove off. The neighborhood went quiet again, as if nothing had happened. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Just sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, waiting for the sky to lighten. The sprinklers started again around 5. The next morning, I checked the backyard. Faint prints near the hose could have been mine, could have been his, could have been hers. I didn't touch them. I ordered cameras and motion lights before my next shift. When they arrived, I felt better for a while. Each night, I'd get a few false alerts. A moth, a stray cat. Until one notification came at 2 a.m. I opened the feed. Someone stood at the far edge of the yard, right outside the light. Just a silhouette, hands in pockets, pacing slow. They never came closer, just lingered. I called the police again. They sent a car by, but by then the figure was gone. A few nights later, another alert. Same figure, same distance from the light. Now, I don't even have to check. I can feel when the camera pings before it does. I've started sleeping with shoes by the bed and a flashlight in my hand. People think the worst part was the man. It wasn't. It was the girl. The way she looked past me like she was already bracing for what came next. The way she ran before I even realized she was in danger. Sometimes I wonder if she was real. No one ever reported a missing girl that matched my description. The police said it might have been an act, a lure. But the way her hands trembled, the way she flinched when he said her name, I can't make myself believe that. It's been months. The cameras still ping sometimes. The motion lights catch nothing but dust. But once, around 3, I caught myself standing in the hallway with my phone in hand, staring at the front door like I was waiting for her to knock again. And that's when I realized the fear doesn't live outside the house anymore. It's in the silence afterward, in the waiting, in wondering what would have happened if I hadn't opened the door. Because when I replay that night in my head, it's never the man's voice I hear. It's hers, small, scared, asking to use the phone. And somewhere in that memory, right before she bolts, I swear I hear her whisper, "He's not my dad." I've always been the kind of person who locks everything, car, shed, even the side gate. It's not paranoia. It's parenting for a single dad. You build routines so you can sleep at night. That Sunday in Mesa started like any other. Remy and I had just finished our grocery run. Milk, cereal, her favorite clementines. And the heat was brutal. We hauled everything to the porch, and I reached for the knob. Locked. Keys? No idea. We couldn't find them anywhere. The back door was locked too, and the garage keypad was dead. Within minutes, the Arizona sun had us wilting. I searched locksmith near me, picked the first ad that said 24/7 local, fast response, and hit call. "Where you at, boss?" the man said. He was there in 10 minutes. Unmarked white van, gray polo, no logo. Friendly, too friendly. He handed Remy a water bottle and joked about softball season like we'd been neighbors for years. He looked at the door. Easy fix. No tools for picking, no finesse, just a drill. Less than a minute later, the lock gave, and he swapped it with a new cylinder from a little organizer tray. "Better than the old one," he said. "High security." "How much?" He showed a chart with complexity fees. It came out higher than expected, but the heat and Remy's flushed face killed my will to argue. I signed his phone, got 2 shiny new keys, and we were back in the house before the ice melted in the trunk. By dinner, the whole thing was just another errand checked off the list. 3 weeks later, we came home from softball practice. It was dusk, purple sky, sprinklers going. I punched the garage code. Still dead. When we reached the porch, the door was open. Not wide, just a few inches, enough to make every instinct in me tighten. I told Remy to stay in the car. The house looked untouched. Couch, TV, dining table, all in place. I walked room to room, slow, listening for anything out of place. Remy's room was fine. My room looked fine. But the game console was gone. My laptop too. And in the hallway where 3 family photos used to hang, one frame was missing. The one of me and Remy at the park. That was the moment the calm snapped. I went back outside and called the police. 2 officers came, one checking the door, the other talking to us under the porch light. The woman took prints that wouldn't matter. The man asked questions. Who else had keys? Any signs of forced entry? Any recent repairs? Yeah, I said. Locksmith came a few weeks back. He crouched near the door frame, pried the faceplate off, and hummed. These cylinders are cheap imports, easy to rekey or duplicate. Installer could have kept a copy. The words hit harder than I expected. I remembered that cheerful tone, the too easy drill, the price that felt just a little off. They bagged the drilled cylinder I'd tossed in the trash. One officer handed me a card and said they'd file it under possible contractor fraud. The other told me not to expect much. These locksmith scams pop up and vanish. When they left, I called the number again. Straight to voicemail. The website was gone, replaced by a blank page full of Latin filler text. All those glowing 5-star reviews, gone too. That night, I didn't sleep. I just kept thinking about how easily I'd handed a stranger access to my home. I replaced everything. Real hardware this time from a physical store. Reinforced deadbolt, door bar, latch up high. I added cameras and told Remy they were for fun security experiments. The truth was simpler. I needed proof that we were still alone in our own house. But the damage was done. Every click of the deadbolt now sounded different. Louder, thinner, like the house was reminding me it had been breached once and could be again. A week later, a detective called. They'd found 3 similar reports in nearby neighborhoods. Same website, same fake local ad, same van description. No arrests. Probably out of state, he said. They'll disappear for a while, pop back up under a new name. I thanked him and hung up. It wasn't comforting. That weekend, my neighbor texted a doorbell cam photo. A white van idling a few houses down. Could have been anyone. Could have been him. She asked if I recognized it. I typed maybe, then deleted it. I didn't want to know for sure. It's been months. We replaced the missing electronics, though I never reprinted that photo. The empty space on the wall stays there like a scar. Remy doesn't remember much. Just the police lights and me telling her it was all fine. But sometimes she asks if we can leave a light on when we go out, so it looks like we're home. I tell her that's smart thinking, even though it twists something in me every time. A lock's click used to mean safety. Now it's a reminder. Someone once drilled through that exact noise and walked in smiling. The house feels normal again most days. Until I'm unlocking the door after work and hear that small shift of air, that subtle creak from the hinge. And for half a second, I expect it to swing open from the other side. And even when it doesn't, the thought lingers. Maybe it already did once, and I just wasn't home to see who came in. I walk dogs for a living. Most days are simple, leashes and sunburn. My favorite client is a golden retriever named Maple. She greets every human like they're her long-lost family and carries joy like it's her job. That afternoon, I had one earbud in, music low. Maple trotted beside me, tail wagging like she had her own beat going. We were halfway through her route when a man waved from across the street. He held an empty leash. Clean, new, bright blue. "Hey," he called. "You seen a black lab? Name's Buddy." Slipped his collar. He jogged over, not even winded, as you might expect from someone who had just lost their dog. Ball cap, windbreaker, friendly face. He loves the park, he said, nodding south. I had another client after Maple, but helping people find their pets came with the job. Sure, I said. We'll look. We looped the block. He didn't shout or whistle, just kept talking to me. My wife's printing flyers, he said. He's fast. Every time I turned back toward Maple's house, he redirected us. Let's check over here. Maybe the park. After 15 minutes, the houses thinned out. Empty lots, half-built homes, a single backhoe behind orange fencing. Buddy, he called again, but it didn't sound like hope. More like acting. I looked at the leash again. No fraying. No fur. What's his collar look like? I asked. Blue, he said, lifting the leash. Matches. Where do you live? I can text if we spot him. Over on Alder, he said, too fast. We'd already passed Alder 10 minutes ago. He gestured toward a gravel lane curving behind the new houses. Let's check the creek. That's when something in my gut went alert. There were no flyers, no car, no sign of panic. Just him. Maple's due back soon, I said. He smiled. One more street. It didn't sound like a request. Every cell in my body said go, but women are taught to stay polite, to not make scenes. I forced a smile and said, I'll circle back that way later. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Won't take long. Maple barked. Sharp, sudden. That broke the spell. I turned and ran. Not a sprint for fitness, pure flight. Maple kept up, confused but thrilled. My bag thudded against my leg until the strap snapped, and I left it. Behind us, I couldn't hear if he followed or not. I didn't look back. When I reached the first row of finished houses, I pounded on the nearest door. A woman answered with the chain still on. I must have sounded insane. Dog, man, leash, construction lots, please. She let me in without questions. I called 911 from her kitchen while Maple drank from a cereal bowl. The officers searched. No black lab. No man in a windbreaker. They told me I'd done the right thing. I nodded, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I returned Maple late. Her owners were kind, though the story wiped the smiles off their faces. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with an alert. Missing woman. Last seen walking near Riverbend Park. The suspect's sketch looked almost identical to the man I'd met. Same eyes, same cap. I stared until the image blurred. I called the police again, gave every detail. They thanked me. Their tone said they'd already added my description to the same folder. I followed the news for weeks. They never found her. Now I still walk dogs, but my routes have rules. No side streets, no earbuds, no shortcuts behind unfinished houses. I carry pepper spray and an alarm that shrieks louder than I can. I've thought a lot about that moment, the split second between helping and running. If I'd stayed a little longer, would I be missing too? Or if I'd argued, made noise, maybe that other woman would still be alive? Survivor's guilt doesn't fade. It just rearranges itself until it fits your day. Sometimes I imagine there really was a buddy. Some dog still out there waiting for a call that never came. Then I see that spotless leash again, dangling from the man's hand, and I know better. He never had a dog. He was hunting for someone who did. Maple still doesn't understand why I flinch when people wave from across the street. She just wags harder, trusting everyone. When we pass that corner now, I keep my head high and my pace firm. Maple looks up, waiting for the cue that says everything's okay. I tell her she's a good girl, over and over until it sounds true. They never found Buddy if he ever existed, but they never found her either. And that's what keeps me walking fast, never looking back down that gravel road. When the first package showed up on my porch, I didn't think much of it. Amazon box, standard label, except the name wasn't mine. Robert Greer, it said. Same address, though. my exact house number and street. I figured it was a simple mix-up. Happens all the time in suburban neighborhoods like mine. The kind of place where every cul-de-sac looks cloned. Beige paint, identical lawns. I set the box by the mailbox, assuming someone would come claim it. The next day, there were 2 more. Different names, same address. I called the courier service. They blamed a clerical error, said they'd flagged the route. Nothing to worry about. Their tone made it sound like I was worrying too much. But by the end of the week, the boxes multiplied. All addressed to strangers. Different handwriting, return addresses from different states. My name wasn't on any of them, but my porch looked like a warehouse. I stacked them in the foyer, out of sight. Out of sight, but not out of mind. The next morning, one arrived half open. I told myself not to look inside. Curiosity is a bad accountant. It always comes with hidden costs. But I looked anyway. Inside were envelopes, dozens of them, credit cards, each one shiny, brand new, all with different names, and all recently activated. I remember just standing there, staring, waiting for logic to catch up. Fraud. Identity theft. Maybe I was part of a scam without realizing it. I checked the shipping label again. My address, perfectly printed. I opened the front door to see if anyone was outside. The delivery truck drove past, but no one was watching me. Not that I could tell. That night, I kept checking my phone for updates from the courier, but all I got were automated replies. A few days later, I came home from work to see 2 unmarked cars parked on the street. 2 men in plain clothes stood in my yard holding badges. "Mr. Rains?" one asked. "Yes?" "Detectives. Mind if we come in?" My first thought was that someone had accused me of something. My second thought was that maybe they were here about the packages. Both were right. They asked if I'd received unusual deliveries. I showed them the pile in the foyer, the credit cards, the labels I'd kept. They exchanged that look. The kind cops give each other when the story doesn't fit, but the person might. "Did you open any others?" one asked. "Just the unsealed one." "Did you use any of the cards?" "No," I said, probably too fast. They jotted notes, photographed the pile, then pulled me aside. "Someone's running a forwarding scam," one explained. "They reroute legitimate mail to clean addresses like yours. Drop points. Safer for them than P.O. boxes. You were probably chosen at random." "Chosen?" I repeated. "As in someone submitted forwarding requests for people in the area, all sending their mail here. So I'm the middleman." "Unwillingly," he said. "But yes." They left with a few boxes and told me not to touch the rest. "We'll be in contact," they said. Then they drove off, leaving tire marks and silence. I spent the next hour standing at my window, expecting someone to return for the missing shipments. The house felt different now. Heavier somehow. That night, I dreamed of footsteps on the porch. When I woke up, there was a new package waiting. This one had my name on it. No return address. Perfect label. I didn't open it. I put it in the garage and shut the door like sealing a vault. Days passed. No updates from the detectives. I tried to move on, go to work, file taxes, live like the house was still mine. But every time I heard a truck down the street, I checked the window. The sight of brown cardboard made my stomach twist. When the doorbell rang again a week later, I didn't answer. The sound of it echoed too long. I checked the camera feed instead. A delivery guy in a blue uniform, holding another box. My name again. He smiled at the camera like he knew me. When I didn't open the door, he just set the box down and walked away. That's when I called the detectives again. No answer. Straight to voicemail. The next morning, the box was gone. That's when things started breaking in small ways. Mail kept arriving late or not at all. And once, when I went to check my mailbox, the key didn't fit. It turned too loosely, like the cylinder had been replaced. I called the post office. They said my forwarding request was active, forwarding my mail somewhere else. They couldn't tell me where without a warrant. I don't remember what I said after that, only that the clerk on the other end went very quiet. The next night, I heard a soft thud outside. I opened the door to find another box. Smaller this time, plain cardboard, no label at all. Just my name printed dead center. Neat, bold, and perfectly spelled. I stood there with the porch light buzzing overhead, trying to convince myself this was a mistake. But the air felt wrong. I didn't bring it inside. I left it there overnight. In the morning, it was gone too. No footprints on the walkway. No sign of anyone having been there. Just a soft drag mark where the box had sat. I started keeping the blinds shut after that. The front camera stayed on 24/7. Sometimes it picked up small movements, shadows pacing along the edge of the yard, never close enough to trigger the full alert. A week later, another package arrived. Same plain box. Same perfect label, only this time it was left on the back porch. That porch isn't visible from the street. Whoever placed it there had to come through the gate. That night, I left my lights on and sat in the living room with a baseball bat across my lap. No knocks. No voices. I called the police again. They said the fraud unit was still working the case, but hadn't found a suspect. These things take time, they said. You'll get an update when we have one. It's been months now. No update. But every few weeks, a new package arrives. Always the same shape, same label, no return address. I stopped opening them. They sit in the garage stacked like quiet threats. Each one a reminder that my address, my name, is now part of something I'll never understand. Sometimes when I'm walking back from the mailbox at dusk, I catch a glimpse of headlights pausing at the corner. The car never stops long, just enough to linger. I tell myself it's nothing, that the system's slow, that the world's full of accidents and errors and bad timing. But sometimes, I think about the last box, the one with my name printed perfectly. The ink wasn't from a label printer, it was handwritten. And that's when I realized someone out there knows exactly who I am. I said yes to that house sitting because I needed the money. It was a 2-story home in Overland Park, pale brick, new roof, plants everywhere. A cat named Fig. Feed twice a day. Water the ferns. Bring in packages. Lock up before bed. Simple. The couple showed me around the morning they left. Thermostat set at 72. Back door sticks unless you pull up. Pantry light timer flickers. The wife handed me a note card with plant instructions written like a checklist. Make yourself at home, she said. And I smiled even though houses like that never really feel like yours. The first few nights were calm. I worked on my thesis at the dining table, Fig sleeping in a patch of light. Evenings were soft. Tea, podcasts. I wore their oversized sweatshirt because the vents blasted cold air. I texted photos of the cat each night to reassure them and myself that everything was fine. On the third morning, I noticed the shower curtain in the hall bathroom was damp. The towel too, edges darker from moisture. I stood in the doorway, trying to remember if I'd used that bathroom. Maybe half asleep one night? I convinced myself I had. The next morning, the shampoo bottle was moved. I hadn't touched it. Still, I told myself it was memory playing tricks. It's amazing how easily you explain away the small things when you're alone. By day 5, I was settled enough to stop noticing the strangeness, until I heard the front door click open. No knock, no hesitation, the sound of a key turning with confidence. I froze mid-step in the kitchen. Then, footsteps crossing the tile. The bathroom door opened, closed. A second later, water ran. I didn't think. I just moved. Into the pantry, closing the door until only an inch of light slipped through. My phone was slick in my hand. I whispered to the 911 operator that someone had entered. She asked if I could get out a back door. I said no. The bar lock was on. She told me to stay hidden. Units are on the way, she said. I could hear my own breathing louder than her voice. The shower ran for minutes. When the water stopped, I heard footsteps again. The back slider creaked open. Cold air pushed across the floor. Silence. The operator asked if I was safe. I waited, counting heartbeats. Then I heard a knock. Police, a man's voice called. Big padded out of the shadows like this was all normal life. The officers swept the house, bathroom floor damp, footprints glistening under the light, bare, adult-sized, leading from the tub to the back door. Outside, the gate was unlatched. Grass pressed where someone had climbed the fence. They didn't find anyone. They asked if I knew anyone with a key. I didn't. They took a statement, promised extra patrols, and left. I sat on the couch holding Fig, trying to convince my body the danger had passed. I called the homeowners. No answer. Left a message that was calm on the surface but shaking underneath. When they called back, the husband spoke first. "We need to tell you something," he said. They'd fired their handyman 2 weeks before. He'd refused to return his spare key. "That's why we asked you to stay," he added. "We just wanted the place to look lived in." The air in the room felt wrong, too heavy to breathe. They apologized over and over. I said I was fine because technically I was. But that wasn't the truth that stayed. I packed my bag and took Fig to my place for the night. The wife texted later with a heart emoji and said they'd rekey everything. I told her I was glad. I never mentioned hearing the door open or the shower running while I hid in the pantry. It felt like information that would make their house unlivable afterward, and they needed to go back to it. I figured silence was a kind of mercy. Weeks later, the homeowners sent me a thank you card with a gift certificate and wrote, "You kept our home safe." I still have their sweatshirt folded on a chair. Sometimes I catch myself looking at it the way you look at an old scar, proof that something happened, even if it's over. People like to end stories like this with lessons. Trust your instincts. Change your locks. Call the cops faster. They're right, but none of that helps in the moment. Because when fear crawls into your chest, you don't think about rules. You think about survival. You think about how quiet a shower can sound when it isn't supposed to be running. If you also learned that monsters wear normal clothes and wave from across the street, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and tell me in the comments what you do if it happened on your street. And if you ever thought about booking a cozy getaway, maybe watch this first. Click now to see 4 disturbing
Saving money feels right. Just like when things are packed tidy and tight. Get auto.
I booked that cabin because the pictures made it seem like the perfect quiet spot. Calm and low key. Pine walls, wide windows, clean desk space. Perfect for a week of work away from city noise. The key was in a lockbox by the porch light, and inside a binder weighted with Wi-Fi info, trail maps, and cheerful notes about black bears. I unpacked in order. Laptop on the dining table, leftovers in the fridge, chargers by the bed. My routines don't change much. I meal prep early, label everything, and keep clutter out of sight, because clutter means work I can't bill for. My night loop is tea, shower, sleep mask, white noise app. The first night was fine. Too quiet, maybe. But when I went to bed, I noticed an interior door near the hallway labeled owner's closet. deadbolted, no handle play. A thin strip of light glowed beneath it. I assumed it was a maintenance bulb and didn't think much of it until I saw it again the next night. Same time, around 10. I even checked my phone clock. By the third night, I found myself waiting for it. And when it came, I stared long enough to notice the light shift, like someone walked between it and the door. I made a note in my phone, light under closet, 10:04. Then I made myself tea because tea fixes stupid thoughts. By night 4, the rational part of me was losing ground. I recorded a 30-second voice memo while standing near the hallway. The playback caught 2 soft clicks, like a light switch, and something too faint to call footsteps. I stared at my phone for a long time before I texted the host, "Hey, just noticed a light under the owner's closet door at night. Is that normal?" The reply came 3 hours later. "Hi there. That room is for supplies. Please don't tamper, smiley face." Something about the smiley face felt off. That night, I knocked. The light turned off immediately. No sound of movement, no lock turning. Just gone. I stood there, waiting, whispering hello into the dark, like maybe this was a misunderstanding both of us could fix. I backed up to the table, grabbed my laptop, and aimed the camera down the hall. I opened the feed on my phone and watched from the couch. On my screen, for half a second, something crossed the gap. A rounded shadow, like a knee or a hand resting against the floor. That was the first time I felt fear. Real, physical fear that didn't belong to logic. I whispered, "Who's there?" to no one. I tried to work the next day, but kept looking down the hallway. I could still see that door in my head. The outline of it, the brass bolt, the way the light died when I touched it. By nightfall, I couldn't stop watching it. Every time I looked away, I'd feel like I was being watched back. I just sat there, phone in hand, staring at that thin gold line on the floor until my eyes ached. I left every other light in the cabin on that night. Kitchen, hallway, bathroom, but still couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., lying in bed, I heard it. A click, then another, then the sound of metal sliding. The door. It wasn't my imagination. That sound is distinct, heavy. The doorknob on that closet door was turning. I sat up, frozen for half a second, then instinct took over. I grabbed my phone, didn't even put on shoes, and ran. Front door, latch, twist. Out into the cold night in nothing but my pajamas. I didn't even think about my car keys. They were still on the kitchen counter. The gravel was cold under my feet. I backed away from the porch, watching the cabin. Every light was still on. I dialed 911 with shaking hands. Told them someone was inside the cabin, but I heard a door unlocking from the inside. The dispatcher asked if I was safe. I said I was outside, barefoot, freezing. She told me to stay where I was, wait for deputies. The wind in the trees was loud. 15 minutes later, flashing lights painted the trees blue and red. The deputies checked the cabin, guns drawn. One of them asked for my code and entry details. They swept the rooms, checked windows, attic, crawl space. Nothing. The owner's closet was locked again. No footprints inside, no tools, no sign of tampering. They couldn't legally force the door without probable cause. One deputy knelt, shone his flashlight at the bottom seam. He said, "Looks sealed from the inside." He didn't sound convinced. I spent the rest of the night outside, wrapped in a blanket they gave me, waiting for them to finish their report. When the deputy finally told me it was safe to go back in, I told him I wasn't staying another minute. I drove barefoot to a motel 20 minutes away and sat in the parking lot until dawn. The next morning, I got a message from the host. "We regret you felt uncomfortable. Your reservation has been canceled and partially refunded. No apology, just the kind of phrasing lawyers sign off on." 2 days later, a friend of mine sent me a Reddit thread about hidden living spaces and dual-use rentals. People finding rooms with internal locks, fake walls, or shared basements. I didn't click through. I didn't want new shapes for the fear I already had. Now, when I stay anywhere new, I do what I call the light test. I turn off every lamp, every overhead, and stand in the dark. If there's a glow from under any closed door, I leave. I didn't get my full refund. I didn't care. What I can't forget isn't the glow. It's the sound of that doorknob turning, slow and heavy, while I was lying there too scared to move. That clean, mechanical certainty that something on the other side wanted out and knew how.
They say if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
I'd been shooting landscapes across New Mexico and needed a few nights to edit and reset. It was a casita with adobe walls, skylight over the bed, and sunlight that hit the plaster like honey. First day felt normal. I unpacked and walked the property. The bedroom mirror caught my eye right away. A tall, wood-framed piece bolted opposite the bed. It threw beautiful light in the morning, so I snapped a shaving mirror test shot. When I wiped the fog off, the glass felt a little warm through the towel. Afternoon heat, I figured. At night, though, after the air cooled, it was still warm. By morning, it cooled off again. I told myself it was residual heat from the wall. Still, my brain started measuring without permission. I killed time on the road with little tests, so I killed the lamps and swept my phone flashlight across the mirror. In the reflection, I caught a faint grid pattern, like a crosshatch behind the glass. It flickered, gone if I moved an inch. Probably the backing mesh, I told myself. But the curiosity had already hooked. I grabbed my pocket compass and stud finder from my camera kit. The compass needle twitched near the mirror edges. The stud finder beeped where there shouldn't be studs. Down by the frame, the caulk line looked uneven, thick at the bottom like someone patched a gap fast. I pressed it lightly. It flexed. I slid a plastic hotel key into the seam and levered just enough to peek. The mirror shifted a fraction of an inch, revealing a 2-inch cavity behind it. Inside sat a small gray plate glued to the back of the mirror, wires dropping through a hole in the drywall. The surface was dotted like vent holes on a transmitter. I knew that pattern. RF hardware. I stepped back. My heart was already beating so fast that it was difficult to even think. I opened a Wi-Fi analyzer on my phone. Dozens of networks popped up, but one unnamed spiked whenever I moved closer to the mirror. Step back, signal dropped. Step forward, peaked. Through the window, the neighboring guest house sat dark. The listing said vacant. Yet through the blinds, a tiny red LED pulsed once, then held steady. I slipped outside with my phone light low. Along the property line, the neighboring window was covered in black film. In the center, a punched-out circle, exactly lens height, aimed straight at where that mirror hung. I went back inside and locked the door. Took photos of everything. The caulk seam, the transmitter, the hole. My hands were shaking. Then I called Airbnb. I kept it clinical. Hidden hardware behind mirror, transmitter plate, unknown network, line of sight through neighbor's window. The rep started her script. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, but paused when I said the word camera. She told me to contact local authorities. 2 police officers arrived 20 minutes later. Both polite, both skeptical. I showed them the mirror gap and the cable disappearing into the wall. One followed the baseboards with his flashlight. Goes through to the next unit, he said. While we talked, a gray Subaru pulled up. The guy introduced himself as the co-host. Friendly smile, quick voice. Said it was just a signal booster for the property Wi-Fi. The second officer asked him to unlock the neighbor unit. He didn't have the key. The first officer pried off a decorative sconce on our side of the wall. Behind it, a junction box with a coax coupler linking the mirror's cable to another line disappearing next door. The co-host repeated, Signal booster. His voice sounded smaller each time. They confiscated the plate, the cabling, and a little receiver box glued under the floor vent. The officers told me it wasn't the first time they'd seen this kind of setup. I signed a statement and gave them my photos. Airbnb moved me to a chain hotel the same night. The follow-up messages were pure PR. We take guest safety seriously. We are investigating. No apology. No details. That's when it hit me. 3 nights in that room, sleeping across from that mirror. I started counting backwards through my habits. Undressing, brushing my teeth, scrolling in bed. The camera would have caught all of it, reflected perfectly. I tried to laugh it off, but every memory came with that red LED pulsing. I didn't tell friends right away. What would I say? That someone turned a vacation rental into a two-way screen? They'd start checking their mirrors, and I didn't want to plant that seed. I finished my shoot schedule, packed up, and drove out of Santa Fe the next morning. 2 weeks later, Airbnb sent another message. We are still investigating. That was it. The worst part was realizing how natural the setup felt. A nice mirror, perfect light, placed where the morning looked best. I'd stood in front of it, adjusting the frame, thinking about composition, not privacy. Now, whenever I see that kind of mirror in a listing photo, centered on the bed, flattering sunlight, I scroll past.
This is the story of the one. As a lineman, it's his job to keep the power on. That's why he chooses Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so he can rise to every challenge. Call, click, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This year, Rachel will get Anna a $200 coat for just $75. But Anna doesn't need to know that, because it's what she thought that counts. Yes, JCPenney. Higher price reflects comparable national brand. See store or jcp.com for details.
I've always been the kind of person who tries to see the good in people. Maybe that's the teacher in me, always looking for potential, even in strangers. So when I booked that little cabin in Bend for a spring break getaway, I didn't second guess the glowing reviews or the smiling host photo. Private retreat, entire place, perfect for artists, the listing said. It looked like the kind of place you could breathe again. Warm wood, soft light, watercolor perfect mountains just past the porch. The host, a man named Marcus, I'm going to use his real name here because I don't care, sent friendly messages before check-in. Let me know if you need firewood or restaurant tips. I live nearby if anything comes up. I told him thank you and that I'd be fine. The first night was quiet. It was the kind of silence I'd been craving. No students calling my name, no deadlines, no traffic hum. Just stillness. When I woke the next morning, the kitchen smelled faintly like coffee. I hadn't made any. I almost laughed at myself. I must have imagined it. But then I noticed a mug in the sink. Half full, black coffee. For a second, I froze, but the rational part of me kicked in. Maybe the cleaners forgot to wash it. Maybe it was sitting there before I arrived and I just didn't see it. I rinsed it out and didn't think too much about it. That night, I locked every door before bed. Front, back, even the small one that led to the deck. I double-checked the windows, brushed my teeth, and fell asleep, watching an old movie on my laptop. The next morning, another mug. Different one this time. Floral pattern, same spot in the sink. Still damp inside. That made me pause. I hadn't left the cabin since check-in, and I'd only used one mug. I told myself there had to be a mix-up. I even texted Marcus politely. Hey, small thing. I found a used mug in the sink this morning. Maybe it was left behind by the cleaner? He replied 20 minutes later, that's strange. Must have been missed during turnover. Sorry about that. I tried to shake it off. Teachers are good at pretending things don't rattle them. I went for a hike, painted a few sketches by the river, came back before sunset. Everything was just as I'd left it. That night, I heard something. It was the sound of a floorboard creaking. I held still in bed, staring at the ceiling. The cabin wasn't large, maybe 600 square feet. Every sound carried. Another creak. I told myself it was the wood contracting from the cold, the wind, an animal outside. But then I smelled it again. Coffee, freshly brewed. The next morning, there was a third mug in the sink. This time I didn't text Marcus. I've seen several stories of hosts entering the house at night. I wanted proof. I set up my phone on the kitchen counter before I left for the day, angled slightly toward the back door. I hit record, locked up, and drove into town. I stayed gone on purpose, browsing art shops, stalling with an extra coffee. When I came back that evening, everything looked normal again, except the mug. My phone had stopped recording after about an hour. The file size was huge, so I plugged it in and fast-forwarded through it. For the first 50 minutes, nothing. Just light shifting through the blinds. Then, around 11:27 a.m., the back door opened. The door didn't creak like it did for me. It opened smoothly, like someone who knew its exact rhythm. A man stepped in, gray hoodie, faded jeans, coffee cup in hand. He didn't even look around, just moved straight to the counter, took a sip, and stood there like it was his morning routine. Then he reached into the sink, washed his mug, and walked back out the same door. My heart started racing as I realized what I was watching. It was Marcus, the same man from the profile picture, same build, same posture. I didn't finish the video. I called Airbnb right away, voice shaking but still trying to sound composed. The agent asked if I could verify it was the host. I said yes, I had video proof. She said she'd escalate it and call the authorities if necessary. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the lights on, sat on the couch with my phone in hand, ready if the back door opened again. Around 3 a.m., it did. The latch turned. I was already on my feet, phone clutched, whispering to the 911 operator before the door even opened all the way. The dispatcher told me to leave immediately and wait outside. I slipped on my sneakers and ran out into the freezing night. The sky was so clear it almost felt cruel. I hid behind my car, whispering updates to the dispatcher while keeping my eyes on the cabin. Police arrived 8 minutes later. They went in first, flashlights moving through the windows. They came out with Marcus. He wasn't fighting. He looked embarrassed. Kept saying, "I was just checking on the property, making sure everything's okay." The officers talked to me after. They said Marcus claimed he lived nearby and entered to inspect for leaks and power issues. He had keys, of course. I asked how long he'd been doing it. The officer said, "Long enough that you caught him." Airbnb refunded me the full stay. "We're deeply sorry," they said. "This host has been suspended pending investigation." They used the kind of language that makes things sound clean, but it didn't feel clean. He didn't sneak in to steal or hurt me. He just came back, night after night, because he could.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies.
I'd rented the little house for a week while working on site with a client. It was just a one-story bungalow tucked between older homes. Clean enough. A place to sleep, shower, and get through the week without distractions. I liked that it was quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear your own footsteps on hardwood. The first night, after unpacking and sending a few late emails, I went to bed around 11. At some point, maybe an hour later, I woke to a scratching sound above the ceiling. It was small and irregular, like something brushing insulation. Squirrels, I thought. Old houses have them. I went back to sleep. The next night, it came again. That soft scraping, just above my room. Not constant, more like movement, then stillness, then movement again. This time it stopped when I sat up. I kept listening. Silence. Then this short, heavy sound. Not a quick scurry, something heavier. By the third night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I left the lamp on, sat in bed, and waited. Around midnight, the house settled. The fridge clicked off, and I heard it. One slow drag across the ceiling, right over my head. I cleared my throat and said, "Hey." It stopped. The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt listening. The next morning, I checked the roofline from outside. No branches touching the house, no loose panels, nothing that could have caused it. That evening, while cooking dinner, I noticed a fine layer of dust on the hallway floor, right beneath the small square hatch that led to the attic. I hadn't seen it before. It looked like insulation dust, light gray, powdery, disturbed recently. I told myself it was from the air vent, but something about it looked too specific, a small scatter like from a shoe. That night, I dragged the spare dining chair under the hatch, climbed up just enough to press my ear to the panel. The wood was cold. I couldn't hear anything. But I swear the air on the other side felt somehow warmer, like someone had been breathing up there. I came down, pushed the chair back, and locked my bedroom door. Sometime after 2 a.m., I woke again. Not from sound, but from pressure. You know when the air in a room feels off, like it's holding something? I stared at the ceiling, waiting. Then came a short tap near the wall. Another. Then a slow drag, right to the center. I whispered, "No." Not even sure why. It just slipped out. The next morning, I messaged the host. "Hey, think you might have an animal in the attic. Heard some noises last few nights." She replied hours later, "Probably mice. Sorry about that. We'll have someone check after your stay." The following night, I lay still, pretending to sleep, trying to make sense of the pattern. It wasn't random. The noises came like cautious movement. Then, and I remember this clearly, the sound of something shifting weight near the attic hatch. Wood creaking under it. I got out of bed, heart thudding, grabbed my car keys, and walked to the living room couch. I figured if I was closer to the front door, I'd at least have an exit. Around 4 a.m., I heard it again. Not scratching this time. Breathing. A slow exhale right above the hallway. I stayed perfectly still until daylight leaked through the blinds. When I finally got up, I noticed the hatch again. It wasn't just dusty this time, it was slightly ajar. Maybe half an inch. Just enough to see the darkness above it. That was it for me. I called the host and told her I was leaving early, citing maintenance issues. She sounded surprised, even cheerful. "Oh, that's fine. Just leave the key in the lockbox." I packed in under 5 minutes. The whole time I could feel the ceiling pressing down. Not literally, but like something above was aware of the noise I made. I didn't even look up when I walked down the hallway. I checked into a motel that night. Small, bright, impersonal. Perfect. I slept through the night for the first time all week. The next day, the host texted again. We checked the attic. Just storage boxes. Everything's fine. I didn't reply. A week later, out of curiosity or stupidity, I searched the address online. There was an old property listing from 2 years earlier. In one of the photos, the attic hatch was open. I don't know if anyone was still living up there or if I just came at the wrong time. But ever since that trip, I can't sleep soundly in quiet houses anymore. I need city noise. Traffic, neighbors, footsteps above. Because silence isn't peace. Sometimes silence just means someone's waiting for you to stop listening. I travel a lot for work, real estate conferences mostly. I'm a realtor, so I've seen every kind of rental from beautiful to barely legal. When I booked that Denver condo, I wasn't expecting trouble. It looked professional. Clean white walls, mid-century furniture, even a welcome card on the counter in the photos. Entire condo, self-check-in, great for business stays. Perfect. I know when a listing feels off. This one didn't. The keypad worked fine. Inside smelled like cleaning spray and wood polish. Everything matched the photos exactly. Same couch, same pillows, same lamp angled just right for the listing picture. I unpacked, poured a drink, and sat on the couch to check emails. It was quiet, almost too quiet. You can tell when a place feels freshly used. The air moves different, the dust hasn't settled. But there were little details that didn't fit. Mail on the counter, fresh envelopes dated just days before. None of them had the host's name on them. A couple were from a local elementary school. In the bedroom, I found children's drawings taped to the wall. Stick figures, bright colors, the word "Dad" written in block letters. The framed photos on the dresser showed a family. A man, a woman, a young boy. None of them looked like the man from the host profile. I remember thinking maybe the host managed it for someone else. Happens all the time. Still, something about it felt too lived in. In the bathroom, the towels were damp. A pair of worn slippers sat near the tub. Not placed, left. Like someone had stepped out and planned to come back. That night, I couldn't stop thinking I'd walked into the wrong life. I locked the doors, turned off the lights, and told myself I was being paranoid. The second night, I woke to the sound of the front door opening. It wasn't loud, just that soft, slow click of a deadbolt turning. I lay still, half hoping it was the wind.
All trees are on sale right now at Michael's. Bring home holiday joy with up to 70% off trees.
Then came the heavy footsteps. A man's voice, low, angry. "Who's in my house?" I sat up fast, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I rented this place, I said, voice cracking. "It's an Airbnb." The man stepped into the room holding a gun. "Liar," he said. "Get on the floor." He flicked on the light. His hands were shaking. He looked terrified, but not like me. His fear was of losing something, not dying. "I swear," I said. "I booked it online. Look." I reached for my phone, but he barked. "Don't move." He tied my wrists with a belt from the closet, told me to lie on the floor. He kept the gun pointed at me the whole time. I tried to explain again. The host's name was Daniel. He sent me the code. The man didn't respond. He paced. His eyes kept darting to the family photos on the wall. "My kids' drawings are in here," he said finally, voice cracking. "You think I don't know my own damn house?" I didn't. I had no idea what to say. He called someone, his wife maybe, told her to call the police. Then he dragged a chair in front of the door and sat down, still aiming the gun. Every few seconds, he'd whisper to himself, "This is insane. Who are you?" I told him everything I could remember. The listing, the messages, the price, the check-in instructions. He just kept shaking his head. "Show me," he said finally. My phone was on the nightstand. He picked it up, unlocked it with my thumb, and looked at the app. I watched him scroll through the listing photos. His face changed. This is my house," he said. "These are my photos." He lowered the gun slightly, but didn't put it down. The silence after that was worse than the shouting. We waited. It felt like hours, but later the police report said it was 36 minutes before the officers arrived. They came in with flashlights drawn, shouting commands. The man dropped the gun immediately and backed away from me, still trembling. I couldn't even stand at first. My hands were numb from the belt. Once they sorted us out, the pieces started to make sense. The man and his family had gone on vacation the week before. Someone had broken into their email, stolen the real estate photos from when they listed the house for sale last year, and used them to create a fake Airbnb page. The host wasn't real. The lockbox on the door had been placed there just days earlier. The family had no idea it even existed. I'd walked into someone's real home, slept in their bed, used their plates, and never questioned it because everything matched the pictures. The officers told me I was lucky the man hadn't pulled the trigger before I woke up. They said that twice. Airbnb refunded everything, sent a generic apology email, said they were investigating the fraudulent listing. The homeowner never pressed charges. He even called me a week later to apologize. Said he couldn't blame me for being fooled. He sounded exhausted, like he hadn't slept since it happened. I told him I understood. I didn't, not really. What stayed with me was the quiet moments after the police left. Standing in that living room, realizing I'd mistaken a stranger's life for a rental. That I'd brushed my teeth in their sink, moved their slippers, and thought nothing of it. It made me realize how easily we trust what looks real online. How quickly we walk into spaces that don't belong to us because a few photos and 5 stars said it was safe. Now, every time I travel, I double-check everything. The address, the permit number, the owner's name. But it doesn't help much, because deep down, I know there's no real way to be sure. I'll always remember the look on that man's face when he realized I wasn't lying. The confusion, the guilt, the fear. He thought he was protecting his home. I thought I was renting one. Turns out, we were both wrong. If you'll never look at a rental key code the same way again, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next nightmare, and tell me which story hit you hardest. And if you think staying up all night on the job is safer than sleeping in a stranger's house, think again. Click now to watch 4 disturbing night shift horror stories. Or if you want to keep going, just stay here. Another video on the same theme you just watched will roll right after. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.
It's not easy being the one everyone counts on to keep your operation running. That's why at Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies and fast delivery. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.